Darren Mougey has made his first firing as the GM of the New York Jets, and there's a lot of movement in the front office. We got a special guest, and we're going to react to all of it. Boy Green Daily starts now.
I'm going to lose my gosh-darn bananas. Boy Green Daily starts now. Zoinks!
I made it clear that my intention was to play, and my intention was to play for the New York Jets.
You're fucking drunk!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Super Bowl week. I'm Paul Lesnar Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to Boy Green Daily, a daily New York Jets video show, also available wherever you get your friggin' podcast, people. And every Wednesday, we're joined by a very special guest, Jets reporter Nick Faria from Athlon Gosh Darn Sports. Nick, good morning.
Good morning, Paul. Great to be back on.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I will just wish you, congratulations. Enjoy the moment, New Orleans, beignets, and all that hoopla. It's a special time for you, Dick Faria.
It's a special time, but you're not getting anything out of me. Not going to talk about it.
Sure.
I'm gonna be in front of the TV at like 8:00 in the morning Sunday, biting my nails. I've got nervous ticks down the list, so it's gonna be fun. It's going to be miserable. I know Jet fans would gladly trade places with me 100%.
Sure, yeah.
And I completely understand. However, this is my team in it, and I will be nervous and freaked out for as much as I need to be.
Again, I can only imagine with the game of games, everyone watching, all that jazz. So we'll see what happens there. But what's happening on One Jets Drive is quite frankly something, Nick, that Jet fans have been begging for a while. Is change. There is a lot of people that work in the Jets building that have been there for eons. I mean, they've been there forever. And one of the first, well, let's start off on the first one here. The first person that Darren Mougey has thrown out the door from his front office perspective, the coaching stuff Aaron Glenn has done, that is Greg Nejma. Who has been with the New York Jets for the last 16 years. He was at the time of his firing, was the co-director of player personnel. And I think it's important to highlight that, he's been there the last 16 years for a variety of roles. Oh, that's interesting. That has coincided with the longest playoff drought in Jets franchise history. So the 16-year run wasn't exactly spectacular, but what do you make of this? Was a guy that was very high, obviously, in the Jets front office. He was just most recently promoted just before last year as well. Man, Darren Mougey making some waves pretty quickly after becoming the next general manager.
So I do want to preface this first. This is not surprising.
Okay.
This isn't surprising because this is what normally happens when we talk about different teams and sort of restructuring their front office groups. When you bring in a new GM, he wants to bring in his people. Most teams in the NFL, when they go through a general manager, they bring in new personnel. They bring in a director of player personnel. They bring in more scouts. They bring in this. They bring in that. So by and large, this is not really a surprise. What makes it a surprise is that these people have survived in the Jets organization for so long. The Jets haven't been one of those teams where the GM comes in and he brings all of his particular personnel groups and his executives, and then he builds it up in his image. So it's a very good sign, a very strong sign that Darren Mougey has been given, and I talked about this before a couple weeks ago, full trust to bring in his guys to develop his plan. And if that means getting rid of some people that the Johnson family or just the Jets in general were comfortable with, then so be it. They really, really want to build a winner here. So while it may not be surprising in terms of the entire scope of the NFL, this is a big step for the Jets because it's telling fans something they haven't been able to before, and that is we understand the losing, we understand it's unacceptable, and we are doing everything in our power to change that.
100%. Again, make sure you guys like the video, hit subscribe. We got 200 people in the room right now. Shout out to MFC, baby, gifting a Boy Green Coffee Club membership. We love it. Shout out to Marvelous 33. You're now a member to the Boy Green Coffee Club. That's 2 raffle tickets for a Boy MFC so far this month. God bless MFC, and thank you so much, my good sir. And getting back to it, I think that's the part of what you said when you look at it for the New York Jets, is that I would understand if, like, Aaron Glenn gets hired. He's like, let me get rid of these Robert Saleh guys, because that makes sense. I'm replacing my own guys. That's the eyebrow raiser, is that you look at a Greg Nedjma. He's been there 16 years. Obviously, that predates several cycle spins. Shout out to Will Parkinson here. He broke this morning that the Jets and David Sosey have parted ways. Sosey was promoted last year to Senior Director of Football Strategy after 5 years as Senior Director of Football Administration. He said Sosey was with the organization since 2018. So that means Sosey was pre-existing to Joe Douglas. That's another one that survived. Joe Douglas came in and didn't obviously immediately get rid of Sosey. So there's all these just layers. Brian Costello, another shout out to Jake Asman, who had Brian Costello of the New York Post down there at Super Bowl Media Row. And Brian, and this was hours before the Nedjma news, he just said, it's kind of weird. The Jets have all these guys on their scouting staff that have just existed forever. He said there are Mike Tannenbaum guys, there are John Idzik guys, there's Mike McCagnon guys. And you're just like, good Lord, how did the next regime that came in didn't go, whoa, what's going on here? And I think it goes back to your point, Nick, that there is an autonomy here that has been given to Muji that clearly has not been given to some of these other guys over the last couple of years, like Joe Douglas, Mike McCagnon, and others.
Trust is a huge thing. I wrote the article on Athlon Sports almost immediately after the introductory press conference to both Glenn and Muji. And the one thing you saw from Woody, just in conversations, I overheard him talking to one person, and he essentially said Aaron Glenn really wanted the job. But on top of it, he was far and away, head and shoulders better than anybody else. Well, if that's the case, and you trust Aaron Glenn, and Aaron Glenn wants Darren Mougey to be his general manager, or they feel they build the best partnership together, then that's the direction you want to go in. Now it's up to Woody Johnson to say, okay, this staff has been created. We've got our top 2 guys. Am I going to be the one to say I want X, Y, and Z in this organization, or should I just keep my hands away and let them do their job? I think this is another example of the Johnson family, not sort of just proving the meddlesome anonymous sources wrong, but understanding that the way they did things in the past isn't going to work in the future. So I think this is a very fundamental change and a very important change for the Jets moving forward.
Here's another interesting one. Shout out. Someone noted this on social media, and I wanted to double check it. So obviously, Phil Savage has been a senior advisor with the New York Jets for some time. I think he was hired near the beginning of the Joe Douglas tenure. And he had been serving as the interim GM, when Joe Douglas was fired. So he was kind of keeping the seat warm, so to speak. And on the Jets website, they have now changed his title to consultant. It would have been weird to have interim GM when you have a real GM now. So they did some shuffling there. And it sounds like Phil Savage is at least going to stay through the draft, which makes a lot of sense because the hay's sort of in the barn. You're too deep. You can't bring in a whole new draft team 2-3 months out. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. But it sounds like Savage is here for at least that part and maybe more. Obviously, inexperienced guys sat in the GM chair before, not including this Jets interim stint. What do you make of the Jets holding on to Savage, and is he someone you'd want the Jets to hold on to, quite frankly, moving forward to have in the room?
Yeah, the standard for front office executives is that if they're going to make changes, it's going to happen immediately after the draft. Okay. Because that's essentially, the draft is essentially the pinnacle, their Super Bowl, if you will, for scouts and director of player personnel and et cetera. Because they are the ones that are judging the talent, determining which talent is good enough to play, so on and so forth. So for them to keep Savage, again, not a big surprise because this is what normally happens. This is you want to keep some people around that understand and have been around the work for the last year, the last calendar year. That's the most important thing. So it makes a lot of sense that they're keeping at least one holdover for the draft. And then afterwards, they're going to bring in, again, people that Muji trusts. So the Jets are doing this kind of by the book a little bit. They understand that they're kind of behind in this process. The people that are now in the determining factor of who's going to be playing on this roster were not here last year, so they're going to have to do things pretty quickly in terms of draft and combine status and free agency, but they look as prepared right now as anyone. Those positions still have to be filled, but they are clearly on their path and their plan. And I think that's something Jet fans should be excited about.
There's no question about it. We got 400 people in the room. Like the video, hit subscribe. And also, I mentioned that MFC gifted a membership earlier. That's a raffle ticket for this contest, baby. I'll throw it up here on the screen. We got a New York Jets signature football, a full-size NFL football. And it's a limited edition collectible with Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Olu Fashanu, all kinds of wonderful signatures on this football. We're giving away to one lucky member that purchases raffle tickets, and it gets drawn randomly on March 1st. We also have a New York Jets Nike Salute to Service long sleeve and a custom laser engraving Jets Boy Green gift package. All three of these items will be won by one lucky member that purchased a raffle ticket. So keep those coming throughout the entire month. We'll be keeping track of those as well on our Excel sheet. By the way, Ricky and other people I know are just joining. They said, so who got fired? And Greg Nejma, he's been with the New York Jets for the last 16 years. He's gone. David Sosi, he's been with the Jets since 2018. He's gone. And these are people that have been basically in the scouting and front office staff for the New York Jets, Ricky New York. And Phil Savage, again, has been reassigned to consultant at this point. Again, he is expected to be here through at least the draft, but it could potentially be longer. And the real theme of this for people that are just joining us is that the Jets, or rather Darren Mougey specifically, is having the autonomy to make decisions that it seems like other general managers that have been in the Jets hole have not been in. And let me flip that back to you here, Nick. So you said Woody is sharing this trust. Well, obviously, he hadn't been sharing this trust for the last couple of guys. Did the losing finally beat some sense into Woody Judge say, okay. I know I've wanted to do it a long time for this way with my people, but obviously that hasn't been working. It's time to release. It's time to let go of the reins. It's time to let somebody else come in and see if they can try it and see if it's any better. Is that ultimately what happened here? Is it the losing that got to him? Nick, can you hear me?
Yeah, I certainly think so. And Paul, okay. if you can't hear me, I apologize.
I got you now. You're good.
Make sure everything's working here, but it looks like it's frozen. Ultimately, I do believe that if you're looking at where the Jets are and where this team needs to be, it hasn't been good enough. So if it hasn't been good enough, everyone's going to look at the people in charge. So if the people are looking in charge that are still there, the Johnson family, they haven't done a good enough job, then they have to be the ones to understand that and say, we need to do better. We need to hire people. We need to bring trust back into the building. So I certainly think that's exactly what happened here. I think the Johnson family understood that 14 years of postseasonless football is not good enough, and they want to build a winner desperately. And the only way to do that moving forward is by actually saying, hey, we're going to bring in people that we trust, that we know can do the job, and we can do a really good job here. They went the unorthodox way. They went with a defensive-minded head coach. They went with a GM without GM experience. There are people that were concerned about that. But the one thing you see right away in terms of the difference is the trust that has been brought back to this team, because it wasn't there under Joe Douglas. It wasn't there under Adam Gase. Adam Gase got 2 years. Joe Douglas got 6, but by the end of it, he wasn't allowed to bring in his own people because Woody Johnson didn't want to give any contracts out to anybody that would last past the contract of Joe Douglas. So it's pretty clear that the Johnson family has understood where they have gone wrong. And the important thing to improvement is understanding. So, again, it may not work out, but at the very least, the Jets can be hopeful that there are new times coming because the ownership group's acting different.
Yeah, let me throw this up on the screen. I talked about this last week, but I want to get your take on this, Nick, because not every Jets fan is all bubbly about the AG and Darren Mougey experience. I'm going to throw this up here on the screen. Shout out to Glenn Naughton, Jet Nation Radio. He tweeted this out. I envy any Jets fan who can look at this and feel any degree of optimism. The head coach has never coached a game. The GM has never picked a player and he skipped the Senior Bowl. The offensive coordinator has never called plays. The special teams coach has never called plays. The quarterback coach has a horrible record and played running back. The offensive line coach has a horrible limited record and played tight end. The DC has a solid history. What's your response to that from Glenn?
I think that's a gross oversimplification of what the Jets did in this coaching staff. I also think that's a negative Nancy type of thing, because for the most part, I dare anyone to say and go through the list of people that have been hired and say they were not qualified for the role. We want to argue about the quarterback coach. That's perfectly fine. I think the quarterback coach is probably one of the weaker hires in this cycle for what New York brought in. But Tanner Engstrand is an up-and-coming offensive mind, an up-and-coming offensive play caller. Why would the Jets not want to bring him in? You look and say, well, Aaron Glenn, he's clearly qualified. He was clearly qualified. He's been around the NFL for 30 years as a player, a scout, and a coach. Darren Mougey's been around the NFL for a very long time. The fact that he was able to survive in Denver for so long was impressive and shows that Denver really, really liked him. You look and say, well, Steve Wilks, great resume as a defensive coordinator, actually even better one as a team manager type of thing. So he should be able to bring in good stuff. The defensive staff looks terrific. Steve Heinden, while he hasn't worked directly with the offensive line, he has worked with Detroit's tight end group, who are just as important to their run and pass blocking as anybody else. They're incredibly important to what that team does, and the development of Sam Laporta cannot be overstated. Sean Jefferson is a really solid receivers coach. You want to look at the inexperience and say this needs to be better. That's perfectly fine. But you can't just sit there and say that this isn't going to work out because these guys are inexperienced. Inexperienced coaching staffs get hired all the time, and they are successful. The reason why the Jets haven't been successful with it is because they've hired the wrong people. They've just hired the wrong people. But I challenge anyone to really sit there and say that this staff should never have been hired in the first place. I would argue this staff is absolutely qualified for it, was able to do the job in their old places before, and certainly should be given the benefit of the doubt, at least to begin with here. If we're because of other issues, I think that's just a negative for no reason. Because and listen, he's good friends with our guys that play like a Jet. But I look at where the Jets are right now, and I simply say, why are you this uptight about coach hirings? We have no idea if it's going to work out. We have no idea if it's actually going to work. It could very well work, and you're going to look like a fool because you wanted to make sure that none of these guys in your mind were qualified or should have been hired for their prospective jobs.
Yeah, when I saw this tweet, my first response was, who in the hell pissed in Glenn's Cheerios? That was my first immediate thought. And then, to be honest, I think there's a lot that you could criticize or poke holes through this kind of very bland, blunt laying of quote-unquote facts. Again, I said this about Darren Mougey. Did he attend the Senior Bowl? No. But he was introduced on Monday, and Senior Bowl practices were less than 24 hours later. That seems hard to blame him for that when he was putting his staff together and helping AG put his staff together. So I think that criticism is pretty lame and just making things up.
I'm sorry, Paul, but
no, go ahead.
Senior Bowl is not the demarcation point for scouting. It's just not. So, yes, there are certain players that can really stand out and do really well and help their draft stock. But teams aren't making decisions on draft day just because of the Senior Bowl. They're looking at the combine. They're looking at pro days. They're looking at the tape. They're looking at everything. So for him to not be there because he's developing his staff and he was his first week on the job trying to figure everything out, I think it's being overreactive and nitpicking of why they don't like the general manager in the first place. It sounds to me like Glenn Naughton really wanted the Jets to go in a certain direction for the head coach and GM, and he's not very happy that they did. Again, if you want to criticize or be concerned about the quarterback coach hire, I get it. I think, like I said, I think he's one of the weaker hires of this entire cycle for New York. But they brought in an experienced play caller as their passing game coordinator. They have an up-and-coming play caller in Tanner Engstrand, who did really great work in Detroit. You listen to people actually in Detroit, and they say, no, Engstrand was really good. He was a big part of why they were so successful. You can't just throw that out the window to support your idea that, oh, he's inexperienced. He's qualified for the job. If they weren't hiring qualified people, if they were hiring, say, an offensive line coach to coach the defense, which Hall of Fame head coaches have done before,
Sure, yeah.
I would argue, I think you're looking at this in a completely negative way, and you need to go out and get some fresh air.
All right, let's go to another one here. Again, shout out to Jake Asman. He's down there live on Radio Row, so he's interviewing a lot of really cool people, including former NFL general manager Thomas Dimitroff. And there was a lot of fascinating things in that conversation because obviously Thomas was the first person to interview with the Jets for their vacant GM role. So a lot of the things he had to say, you're like, interesting, and things that he pitched. One of the things that he explained was that he believes Aaron Rodgers can still play. He believes he still has gas left in the tank, but he advocated to the Jets, or he explained his plan would be not to bring Aaron Rodgers back, and it's not because of the play on the field, and he thinks he still could and could go somewhere else and have success. His argument to Jake Asman was all the other stuff of the locker room is so sacred and the fitting of pieces and things of that nature. Thomas said that if he would have gotten the job, he would have sat down with Aaron and see if his assumptions and assertions and things of that nature were well-founded or not. So it wasn't just he was never going to talk to Aaron and just move on from him, but that his idea, his plan, if he was given the job, was to move on from Aaron. So I'm curious your reaction to that. I guess we could start there first.
So I've got an article coming on Avon Sports that's going to get published immediately after our chat here.
Yeah.
And I delve into that because I think it's one of the more interesting answers and a huge tease of what the Jets could eventually do. Because Dimitroff also on Radio Row, I think it was with WFAN, not just with Jake, but he also said that he believes a majority of the people that interviewed for the GM role would have moved on from Aaron Rodgers and said they would have moved on.
Oh, wow. I didn't hear that. Okay. Wow.
And I looked at that and said, so if the majority of executives didn't want to move on from him, and those executives did not get the job, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
We know from previous reports that Aaron Glenn is at least on the idea of having Rodgers return for the 2025 season. Just to see. Obviously, they're going to have conversations, and objectively on the record, he said that no decision has been made. We've talked to Aaron, and that's pretty much it.
But there's been some reports to your point that that he's potentially open to it. I think there's Jay Glazer who said that. Yeah,
right. If he was open to it, and he is the guy running the show, as we have seen and we have heard, he was hired before the GM. Is it safe to believe that they wanted to pair him with a general manager that felt very similar to him at the quarterback position? And again, this is not something guaranteed. I have absolutely no source to confirm that, they want to bring him back. We have no idea. I don't think any member of the beat is going to know until Aaron Rodgers actually makes that decision because he's not going to want to tell anyone. But if Aaron Glenn wants or is open to Aaron Rodgers coming back, and a boatload of GMs during the hiring process and the interview process said they don't want him back, isn't it safe to believe that those guys weren't going to be the right fit with Aaron Glenn? Because at the quarterback position, the first question you have to solve in this offseason is what you're going to do at quarterback, and you want both your head coach and GM to be on the same page. I think what Dimitroff did was he opened the door a little bit to explain that the Jets may be more inclined to bring Aaron Rodgers back than we originally believed.
Yeah, that's a lot of the dot connecting that I think a lot of people were doing during that Thomas Dimitroff interview with Jake. Again, he hit Media Row, so you guys could just go YouTube. I'm sure Thomas Dimitroff interviews, so you could probably catch up on all the hits that he did there on Radio Row. But that's the one where, like he said, I would have, my plan was for him not to come back. And we're like, well, you didn't get the job. Interesting. So I'm curious, because Thomas said this, but I'm curious what Nick, or what you could pull from this is Jake asked Thomas, did he get a feeling during the interview with Woody that Woody wanted him to answer one way or the other? Or he was trying to lean, like on the Aaron Rodgers question, like, did Woody go, hey, what do you think about this? Because I really want him back. Maybe not that direct or blunt, but sort of that thing that he may have been leading in a certain direction. And Thomas said, no, he was not, that it was fully the autonomy was up to whoever was hired. I'm curious, not that Thomas would be lying or not, that was his perception of it in the interview process. But do you believe that Woody is going to, with Darren and Aaron, that he is going to let it ride? Because people reported, obviously, before Darren and AG were hired, that Woody and Aaron apparently have this bad relationship and that he doesn't want him back and things of that nature.
I'm not going to sit here and say that we know what the decision on Rodgers is going to be. It's really just connecting the dots right now. Sure. And I think it's pretty easy to look and say, well, wait a minute. If Dimitroff is going to say, he wouldn't have hired him and that he felt that a lot of GMs that were going to be interviewed in this process were not going to bring Rodgers back, and none of them were hired to do so, but we have reports saying that Aaron Glenn was interested in doing it, then there's some evidence to support that maybe Muji was more open to that possibility than other executives. Again, we don't know, and we're not going to know until Aaron Rodgers probably announces to the world if he's retiring or coming back for next season. But ultimately, I look at Woody Johnson staying out of it. And again, this is kind of the original point that I made.
Sure.
He trusts the guys. He trusts Aaron Glenn. He trusts Darren Mougey. And he trusts them to say, hey, you guys make the decision. Whatever you feel is in the best interest of this team to win and win now, I want to do it. I don't care if that means going back to Rodgers and saying, let's roll. I don't care if it's going to him and saying, you better retire because no one's going to want you. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be behind this group 100%. Again, you saw it in the press conference. You saw a wave of relief from Woody Johnson the entire time Aaron Glenn was talking, the entire time Darren Mougey was talking. And relief can come from the fact that, I've got the guys that I picked, that I want. But what it really was a relief of, these are the guys that I truly believe in my bones that are going to turn around the Jets franchise. We don't know if it's going to end up working out. But for Woody Johnson to essentially take a step back and learn from the fact that him nitpicking on certain things and being meddlesome as reported in others, I think it's a very important distinction going into this next season, because it's not Woody driving the train anymore. It is Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey, and that is it.
Interesting. Well, what about this? Do we know a timeline? We're in Super Bowl week right now. The NFL Combine starts at the end of the month. It is, I've got my calendar here. Thursday the 27th is the first series of workouts. Obviously, players report a few days before that. So you got the Combine literally in, 3 weeks. And then obviously free agency is like the first, second week of March with the legal tampering period and everything. When the hell are we getting this Aaron Rodgers decision? I assume it's just going to be a Pat McAfee. Hey, I'm hopping on to reveal to the planet universe, and we'll all be huddled around our computer screens for that. But when is the timeline here? Because it has to be somewhere in the next month and change, because the Jets have to know that going into free agency. But where is it, do you think, Nick Ferrier?
I think the decision is going to be made before the Combine. I really do.
Wow. Okay.
They can't really decide. And they have to have a free agent plan. Free agency, as we know, comes almost immediately after the Combine now.
Right.
So when I look at where the Jets are, and I look and say, okay, well, they need to do X, Y, and Z. They need to, bring in an interior defensive tackle. They need to figure out what they're going to do at right tackle. They got to figure out if there's going to be an additional receiver brought in. All that stuff needs to be determined, and you can't do that until you have an answer at the quarterback position. So I'm fully entrenched that this is going to be resolved before the Combine begins. We'll see what it ends up happening, but I would be shocked if there's still not an answer, if there's not clarity on what the Jets are going to do at the quarterback position by then.
All right, people, join the Boy Green Coffee Club. It's down in the YouTube description down below, youtube.com/BoyGreen25. But in the YouTube description, it says, join the Boy Green Coffee Club here. It's only $2.99 a month. If you're watching right now, click it, because, of course, you can become a supporter of the show. You get all kinds of wonderful action. But, of course, the most important part is you get a chance to win a bunch of free crap. For only $2.99, you'll have a chance at this Signature Jets football, salute to service long sleeve, and a custom laser engraving package. Again, join the Boy Green Coffee Coffee Club right now, or gift memberships. There's no limit to how many raffle tickets you could get. Again, you can purchase your own ticket down below by joining the Boy Green Coffee Club or gifting memberships right now. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the money sign. Final option is gift channel memberships, baby. You can gift as many as you like. Every Boy Green Coffee Club membership for $2.99 is a raffle ticket, baby. All right, let's open up the phone lines, you crazy bastards. We'll play a quick Hep song. We'll be right back.
Boy Green Daily, Boy Green Daily, Boy Green Daily. Talking just football, man. Boy Green Daily, Boy Green Daily, Boy Green Daily. The New York Jets Football Club. Wow. Offense, defense, special teams. Watch the Super Bowl season with Boy Green. J-E-T-S. Jets.
Of course, that would be true if you're an Eagles fan watching a Super Bowl season. Well, I'm watching one too, just from my couch.
Join the bandwagon. Come on, let's slay the dragon once and for all.
You know, I do have a soft place in my heart for Saquon, and I love bothering, as you know, my co-host on the radio is a diehard Giants fan, so rubbing it in as much as I can is something I've thoroughly enjoyed this football season. There's no question about it. By the way, shout out here, number one Austrian Jet fan gifting a Boy Green Coffee Club membership. We love to see it. Excellent. Thank you so much to our number one Austrian Jet fan. That went to Vibrate Higher. I'm not going to ask any additional questions on that for that membership that just came through. Thank you very much. And let's add another one on the sheet for our number one Austrian Jet fan. It's time to go to the phone lines here on the program. Actually, before we do, we got another YouTube super chat coming in, which we appreciate. Those count all the same for our raffle tickets as well. Let's pop this up.
Wow.
Junior Jet, a.k.a. JR Jet, the $1.99 super chat. We appreciate it. I'm trying hard to take Muji seriously. I think, again, I get it. We don't know. It's kind of what Nick Ferry said at the beginning of this with assistant coaches coming over. They have no experience. Will they work? I don't know. Will they fail? I don't know. Well, who knows? Darren Mougey is the third youngest general manager in football. He's been with the Broncos. There's been good moments. There's been bad moments. Is he responsible for Paxton Lynch? Gross. Did he hire Nathaniel Hackett? Disgusting. Or did he get Bo Nix? Did he do this? Did he do that? There's good moves. There's bad moves. Quentin Myers. Was that the gem find that Darren Mougey said, God, we got to walk away from the draft with this guy? He's an all-pro offensive lineman. I don't friggin' know. It's hard to, delegate the responsibilities of good shit that happened to terrible shit that happened with old Darren Mougey. But the best thing is to hold on for dear life and hope it all works out. I think that's really all we can do from here, Nick.
He's made one public appearance. He's spoken once. He's creating his staff. What are we doing here? Like, seriously, what are we actually complaining about with Darren Mougey? This isn't the time to talk about roster moves just yet. He's filling out his staff. There's still leftover staff that is preparing the team for the draft and the combine. All these things we about 2 years. What about him concerns you outside of the record in Denver? Like, that's all you can look and say, well, I'm worried about this, this, and this. But as we have seen throughout NFL history, great GMs do really, really well in some moves and really, really bad in others. How much the best GM in football? He brought in Saquon. He brought in Zach Bond. He also brought in Bryce Huff, who's done very little. He also brought in Paris Campbell and Devontae Parker, who did not play this season. So to nitpick every single move, I think is to drive yourself insane, particularly with a guy that's been around a team for a very long time like Muji has. But if we're going to sit here and say that Muji isn't a hire, you have troubles taking him seriously, why? What has he done to prove that? There's been no substantial evidence that shows he'll be a bad or good GM in this process.
Yeah, we have no idea. But JR Jed, I appreciate you doing your best to try to take him seriously. All right, let's go to the phone lines here on the show. and I'm not sure if this individual knows this, so this might be a surprise to him on the show. But let's bring him on first. Let's bring Chef Kevin Gilbert has graced us with his presence, organizing some important executive documents, I'm sure, there on the site. Now, Chef, I don't know if you saw this, but I want to make sure I bring it back up because at the end of last month, we're doing a raffle giveaway. And number one Austrian Jet fan says, hey, if I just give you a bag of money, can I just buy an emoji from you right now and gift it to somebody? I'm like, yeah, I guess. We sort of kind of make up the rules here. And number one Austrian Jet fan reached out to me privately and said the Jet fan that is a great interactor with this show and deserves his own emoji was Chef Kevin Gilbert. And Snowball cooked this puppy up right here. Booyah! This emoji is available for all Boy Green Coffee Club members to use in their emojis. That beautiful smile from Chef Kevin Gilbert, that is available for all of us. And shout out to Snowball for making it, Jets Worldwide. Check out the Jets YouTube channel. And specifically, number one Austrian Jet fan. He said you were the guy that deserved the love, and now you finally got it, Chef Kevin Gilbert. Your reaction?
Hey, much appreciated, Australian Jet fan, man. I appreciate everything you do for the show, man. I appreciate you going out of your way, spending your money, giving me a little bit of recognition, man. That's definitely truly appreciated. Snowball, great job getting that that emoji together, man. Truly appreciate it. Thank you guys. Thank everybody involved. BG, Nick, thank you guys for having me on the show. Thank you guys again for your insights and everything. I did want to touch on Muji for a sec, Nick, since you just brought it up. Yeah. I wasn't mad with the hire. The only you were talking about red flags. It's like he was a part of trading for Zach Wilson. So for that, it's like, what did you see in Zach Wilson where you gave up a draft pick for him? Now it's nitpicking. It was a late round pick, but still, it's like, what do you see in him? And for me, it's like, I wish we would have hired Muji first, because hire him second, it's like, is our GM, is he allowed, and hypothetically saying, if this team goes south, is he allowed to pull the trigger and fire Aaron Glenn if that happens? I don't think that he would be able to do that just because he was hired after Aaron. Is that
no, the structure would not be the GM fires the head coach. That's not the structure the Jets have run. They're not going to run here. They are both reporting to Woody Johnson. So Woody Johnson is going to make the decisions on both of them together. And if one is not up to par, if Aaron Glenn's doing a great job with the bad roster and they say we need a better GM, then Muji's out. If the roster's really good and Muji's done a great job and Aaron Glenn's not doing the job, then Glenn's out. It's not going to be one tied to the other. It's both are going together and reporting to Johnson.
Although the one thing I will add, Chef Kevin Gilbert, I had Rich Samini on last week. I just love the bluntness of what he said, because I brought up the same thing. Head coach hired before GM. What does that mean? He's like, let's make this clear. Aaron Glenn wears the pants in this relationship. And I was like, okay, understood, Rich Samini. And it certainly, you go to the presser, right? AG, he was the star. He commanded the room. He got most of the questions that I'm not surprised about. So Darren Mougey kind of went there. The fact of the matter is they have a relationship. That AG was in the second interview process with Muji when AG was already hired and Muji was coming in for round 2 of interviews. Apparently AG, pounded the table for him a little bit. And now here we are. So we'll see. But I get what you're saying. Things can get funky when there's not clear defined roles for everybody at the top.
And then it's also what vision? Is it a shared vision? Is it Aaron's vision? Because it's with the draft, and I get what you're saying, Nick. You can't really figure out what we're gonna do at our pick yet. Still trying to figure out the position coaches and getting that all intact. Plus, Nick, the whole, it felt like the whole season since Denver, I was talking about our kicking situation. It's
oh boy,
Greg is still on our contract for next season for $4 million. Is this something where we cut him? Does it hurt us with the dead cap? There's so much decisions to be made, and it's once we get a clear sense of what we're kind of getting ready to do, then it will make a little bit more sense. to all of us for clarity, but it almost feels like it's Glenn's ship, and then whatever Glenn kind of really wants to do, like maybe he wants to start in the trenches on defense, and then it's just Muji's job to kind of tie up the loose ends. Is that kind of like how this thing is going to work out?
No, so essentially they're going to have the mold of what the 49ers did. They hire Kyle Shanahan, and then they bring in John Lynch as their GM. And the reason for that is they want the head coach building the team in his image, how he wants it to be. But the GM is going to be a part of that process. This isn't going to be Aaron Glenn says, I want this done. The GM says, I want this done. And everyone just goes with the head coach anyway. This is a collaborative approach. Aaron Glenn kind of said it in his introductory presser, where we're not going to agree on everything. And we're going to go in the room and we're going to have difficult conversations. And when we come out, we're going to come out united as one with a shared vision. And I think that's very important. Aaron Glenn wears the pants in the relationship. He's going to be the guy. He's going to be the face of the organization. But it's not just going to be Aaron Glenn's going to pick whatever player he wants. This is a collaborative approach where Muji is going to trust his staff. That staff is going to come in with a recommendation. Aaron Glenn's going to trust his staff, and their staff's going to come up with a recommendation. And the idea is both of them will have the shared vision of what this team needs to be done, so there's very little debate. If there is, though, they're going to go in the room and they're going to collaborate together to make sure they have the best overall decision for the future of the franchise. This is not one or the over the other. This is we're going to work together like other teams do at this time. Kyle Shanahan wears the pants in the 49ers relationship. I think that's pretty obvious. But what they do is they work collaboratively. John Lynch is still very important in that process. Muji is going to be very important in this process for New York. That's not going to change just because he was hired after Glenn.
All right, yeah, because my thing too, it's like it sounds good and all, but they were saying the same thing with the last regime, like Sal and Joe Douglas. They were saying like they're locked at the hip and they're on the same level. But then during the season, like 2 years ago with Zach, when he was struggling when Rodgers went down, it felt like, in my opinion, that Sal was like, yo, like Zach ain't the guy. Like we need to bring somebody else in. And Joe Douglas didn't bring anybody in other than Trevor Siemian, like, towards the end, which didn't help at all. So it's like I hear all this stuff, but then the action is showing me something else. And it's like kind of hard to buy in after us Jet fans have been through all this kind of stuff, and to now all of a sudden feel like, okay, we got a rookie GM, we got a rookie head coach. I get it. We drafted him, he did the scouting and all. Like I get all that, but it's really hard to believe that the same stuff is going to go on. Like I guess at the end of the day, for us Jet fans and Nick, I respect your reporting. It's like we're just going to have to wait and see at this point. Like we could kind of say whatever we want, but for us, we're just scarred from all this stupid stuff that's been happening in the past, where it's really hard for me to believe everything that's gonna happen in the future.
Yeah. And no one's arguing with that, Kevin. Like,
Yeah.
The history's been bad, and until the Jets actually win, they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt in terms of getting the right people in place. But I would counter that by essentially saying you're not going to know this until 8 months, and for another 8 months. There's no point in freaking out about if you hired the right people and I know this guy stinks and this is the reason why this guy stinks and that's the reason why this guy stinks. We don't know. We just don't know. This is not the time to look and say, man, I'm really worried about this. I'm really worried about that, because the roster is going to be completely different. The organization's completely different. And again, people look and say, well, it's not going to work because of the Jets' history. That's what the Commanders said this past year, where they were the laughing stock of the league. They had a worse record than the Jets the previous year. They didn't have a quarterback. They didn't have a coach. And then they bring in an older head coach who was absolutely demolished in the wild card round of the playoffs in his defense. And it was so embarrassing that Dallas wanted to move on from him to begin with. And it turned out that head coach did great his first year. They got to the conference championship game. They absolutely got their teeth kicked in, but that's besides the point. They still got there. If I'm looking at the Jets right now, of course, they have shown nothing to prove that they are going to fix things. But this isn't the time to say they will or won't because they are the Jets. This is the time to say, let's see their plan. the reserve judgment until you see what the plan is, because the plan might be a good one. The plan might actually work. They might end the playoff drought next year. We don't know. But to sit there and say that this isn't going to happen because we're Jet fans, I think it's denying the chance to give some very qualified people an opportunity to do their job the right way.
Yeah, I think Washington, like, because they got lucky getting Daniels, like the season prior when we played Washington and Greg hit that 50-yard walk-off kick or
Oh yeah.
whatever to win the game. Like, if he would have missed, Washington wouldn't have Jaden Daniels, and are they still making it to the playoffs like they did this year? It's like the quarterback thing is so important, and for us standing at 7, Rodgers, all right, like, what are the better options? What else is out there long term and this and that? Like, that's above our pay grade, and we're not, within that organization to figure that stuff out. But it's really hard when you're looking around and looking at free agency and looking at the draft and seeing where we're at, where it's like, all right, we're set up for the future, because quarterback is the number one position. And with Rodgers, he ain't getting any younger. I'm on board with him, next season and all that. But it's like, what's the future, man? Like, with the dead cap and the salary and all that kind of stuff. Like, I get taking a pay cut and everything like that. But it's like, what are the pieces going to be built around us? Like, weapons in the draft. Like, if we get Rodgers, and that means, there's a good chance we'll have Devontae, we'll have Garrett, and then it's like, do we go for a tight end? Do we get that weapon that we need, knowing that our tight end room was trash the last couple of seasons? Conklin, I get it, he was okay, but still, man, we need a weapon. You can't tell me on his face, like, to my face, that Conklin was a weapon. All right, like, in the run game, Conklin wasn't manning up. He wasn't moving people out of the way. Like, for me, it's like you need something there. And then if it's not a weapon, then it's like trenches, like making sure that we're at the line of scrimmage and we're winning the line of scrimmage on defense. Like, that was our identity, and I don't really see an identity for this team right now. Defense was bad. Offense, I get it. Rodgers had some nice stats, 28 touchdowns, all that stuff, or whatever. Garrett got another 1,000-yard season. There wasn't really much else, man. Morstead, whatever. Our kicking game was atrocious. Like, what do we have right now?
Shout out to Will McDonald, that double-digit sack season, very nice.
Hey, that was a great shining point on our defense, and with Jermaine coming back now, he's injured.
I can't believe they didn't take Jackson Smith and Jigba. What a terrible pick.
I know, man. There's so much stuff, man. Like with Becton,
I'm making a joke, Kevin, because there's so many people that threw themselves out the window because Will McDonald did not produce right away his rookie season, and naturally turned out to have a pretty damn good sophomore year. But
yeah, it was. So I'm with you, Nick. Like, I just felt like that season when we did get McDonald, like he was just put on the bench. Like, we didn't even utilize him at all.
Yeah.
So for me, for a first round pick, if you're not being put into the starting rotation, what's even the point really when we're in win now mode? Like last year, that was win now mode, and we needed weapons, man. I'm sorry, go ahead, Nick.
When the Eagles drafted Jordan Davis, they had Fletcher Cox. And when they drafted Cam Jurgens in the second round, they had Jason Kelsey. They had just drafted Landon Dickerson the previous year. You want to know why they're in the Super Bowl this year? Because when Kelsey and Fletch retired, they already had their replacements on the roster. Jurgens moved back to center. Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter were already there. They had drafted Milton Williams as well. You want to be ahead of the curve in some situations. Defensive line is at the top of the list. Offensive line is at the top of the list. Now, the Will McDonald pick I thought was a shrewd one, and it's clearly worked out in these first two seasons for New York, because he is now, what is the first time since 2014, an actual homegrown edge rusher, put up over 10 sacks in the season for the Jets. It might have been even later, but now you have an edge rusher. And this does not excuse Joe Douglas, because he butchered that position group after Will McDonald. I mean, Jermaine Johnson, of course, the injury happens. You never want to see that happen. But trading away John Franklin Myers and not having, a strong role piece for Hassan Reddick when he eventually showed up, not getting that deal done before he did, all those things played a part in it. And that's why I felt that edge rusher is a major need for the Jets this offseason, because I do agree. You need more than just Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson, particularly because Jermaine is coming off of an Achilles injury. You have no idea what he's going to look like. It's not fair to assume that he's going to walk in and be a 10-sack guy. It's not fair to put that on him coming off a major injury like this. So I look at where the Jets are right now, and I look at where their needs are. And we need to acknowledge that just because a rookie doesn't play in year one or doesn't play up to the potential that we know or expect him to be, doesn't mean that it's a bad pick right away. People, you've heard draft analysts time and time again say you can't judge a draft until 3 years. 3 years, you'll finally get a clear picture of how good this class is or how good a player is. Why were people so against giving McDonald a chance after year one? Well, because Jackson Smith and Jigba and Zay Flowers, they were so successful. They didn't get the offensive lineman for Pittsburgh. Well, people refuse to acknowledge that the offensive lineman for Pittsburgh has been benched 3 different times.
Roger Jones has been god-awful.
That is true.
It's been awful. So we need to take a step back and recognize that while this era of sports talk and this era of sports fandom is all about the immediate, I got to be the one that brings in the hot take. I got to be the one that brings in the views. Aaron Rodgers, kicks puppies for a living, whatever it is. We need to acknowledge that football is not a sport that is so reactive in the first place. You don't react to one game. You don't react to one situation. It's crazy to get all up in everyone's grill about a baseball team losing a game 1 of 162. It's crazy to have that mindset. But in football, it's the same exact way. Just because it's 17 games, one loss is important doesn't mean that everyone's got to throw the towel or one player had a bad game, that player's no longer good. It doesn't work like that in the NFL. It doesn't work like that in life either.
The one thing that I would just say that ate at me about the Will McDonald thing is, as a fan, I got to go to the Jets-Cowboys game at AT&T. I thought I was going to be seeing Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers. I got Zach Wilson instead, but that's neither here nor there. But several games of that rookie season for Will McDonald, he was a healthy scratch. He didn't even dress. And the Jets-Cowboys game was one of them because I looked at my dad like, what the hell? How arrogant. Of the Jets, especially a 15th overall pick. We're like, yeah, we're not going to need you today, champ. Slap on the cheeks. Just go take a seat. I was like, what the fuck? Like, huh? What the hell? How are we so arrogant that our team is so good? Sorry, Will, today's just not your day. We're looking for a different kind of guy today. It's maybe more of a run game. We're going to need a beefier guy today. That, to me, was the arrogance that got to me. Now, Will McDonald has blossomed into this beautiful flower, but the Jets could take a guy with the 15th overall pick, and they must have said at the time, there might be games where old Willie isn't even active. Like, that, to me, is crazy. No other team in the league is having these first-round picks on purpose, being these healthy. Like, that's bizarre.
If you don't mind, could I respond to the Will McDonald stuff?
Yeah.
So I get the stats of the double-digit sacks and all that.
Yeah.
I think like the first 4 or 5 sacks was in the first 3 games of him.
Yeah,
playing,
3 sacks against the Titans. Yep.
Yeah. So I think it might be a little misleading because with him on the line, like even with him being drafted, man, he was light. And when it comes to the run defense, like that's where we struggled like the most. And with him, how light he is, he wasn't a difference maker. Like him on Dawkins, like he looks like a little kid, like a little child. And that's something that we had the prior year with Jermaine Johnson on the one side and JFM on the other, where we were able to help stuff the run with McDonald.
Still couldn't stop the run.
What's that?
You were still one of the worst run defenses in football. That year prior, they were still struggling.
So that's my point, man. So you're getting somebody a lot lighter who's a rookie, who was now switching stances. Like I didn't understand that pick, man. And then to BG's point where he wasn't even playing, he wasn't even like
several games.
He wasn't even putting a jersey on in like a couple of the games. Like it didn't make no sense to me.
Again, I'm not going to sit here and defend that. You always want to have your first round pick play.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always on the patient side of let's not throw in the towel and say this kid can't play, because Vic very well could be the coaches not understanding the role. I think Malachi Corley is another example of that. Corley is a guy where you need to give him touches and scheme him opportunities to get the ball, and the Jets simply didn't do it this year. Will they be better at it with Tanner Engstrand? If you look at his job in Detroit, it sounds like you can. You'll be able to scheme him up. I just look at where the Will McDonald pick and the process behind all of that. And the people that were involved are no longer there. They're not.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
they go.
It's important to remember that we can talk about, oh, this player's good, this player's good, this player's bad, this player's bad. They're going to have a different opinion on all of it. They're going to have their own opinion. So maybe they look and say, well, yeah, Will McDonald had 10 sacks this past season. Really good player. Let's see how he looks in an Aaron Glenn system. But we prefer bigger edge rushers. We prefer smaller edge rushers. One thing about the Robert Saleh defense, that cover 3 defense, is it is susceptible to the run. It always is susceptible to the run. You look at the 49ers. They've been susceptible to the run for a very long time. And not to say that they're bad. It's just that that's something you give up to not have to worry about the passing game or not give up the big plays, those kind of things. When you have to give something to get something on the defensive side, and Saleh's scheme has always been about giving up the run to be better prepared for the pass. So I think that's another clear distinction there. Do I think they can be a lot better against the run? Of course. I think they will be with Aaron Glenn in the picture because they did such a great job in Detroit in stopping the run, particularly when they had everybody healthy earlier in the season. But again, they're not going to make a decision on these guys right away. And I don't think it's fair if they do so. You can't make a distinction. You can't make a decision on who you draft and draft picks in general for 3 years. Jaden Daniels looks great, and he looks like the next great quarterback coming up. They said about RG3 as well. They said about a lot of other quarterbacks as well.
Nick Furrier not buying the Jaden Daniels hype. Fugazi.
Again, it's one of those things. Caleb Williams was probably the weakest of the 3 quarterbacks that were taken in the top 3 overall. People love Drake May. I love Drake May in the process. I thought he was great in New England this year with all the absolute crap they gave him. Are we sure that Caleb Williams isn't going to be able to bounce back in year 2 and act like the top quarterback of the class that he was? Are we sure that's going to happen? We're too reactionary in football now where we do not let things play out. And I think that's something, particularly right now in the offseason for the Jets with the Super Bowl coming up, there's no reason to be so reactionary when we don't know what the plan is.
Fair enough.
All right, hey man, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for your insight. BG, thanks again for having me on my show. Australian Jet fan. Salute to you, Snowball as well. Appreciate you guys. Nick, man, you know I like you. Go Chiefs, man.
Ew.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to say, like, love you. I hope things go well.
Yeah, no, that was a big fuck you, buddy. That was a big, Chiefs Kingdom, 3P. Yeah, and especially, right, all the pleasantries at the end. Yeah, I love you, Nick, but fuck you. Chiefs Kingdom for life.
And say, oh, love you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. I agree. Thinking like, oh, good luck.
Yeah.
Comes out.
That felt like a dick move. Yeah, it felt like a dick move. That felt like a roundhouse kick a little bit lower, but hey, different strokes for different folks, that's for sure. Hey, we got a YouTube super chat coming in. JR Jet is back, baby, and we appreciate it. And by the way, JR Jet, you now have a raffle ticket to our giveaway this month.
Wow.
Going back to that, we were all reacting earlier to Glenn Naughton from Gen Nation Radio, some of the negativity. JR Jet says Glenn Naughton is always negative. He's not the guy, which is fine. Hey, I would just say this, and I said this the other day. I think it was in the Badlands Discord. I get it. By nature, I am a optimistic guy. I'm a glass half full guy. I try to see the best out of a situation first. And I know that is quite rare in Jets land where all hell breaks loose and everyone is operating from a pessimistic standpoint. Everyone can be whatever flavor they prefer to be. If you prefer to be negative and you have to, see Santa's fat ass come down the chimney before you start singing ho, 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 fine. If that's where you want to be, I believe in Santa. I go to bed at night. Can't wait for those cookies and milk to get drank and eaten. I don't know. Different strokes, different folks, people. But I'm leaning towards optimism. You could go either way with this coaching staff. When they haven't done the job before, you don't know. So there's a lot of I don't know on this, but I see it as I don't know. Optimism. Look at all of the bleeping coaches in the league that were first-time guys that exploded. Harbaugh with the Ravens. He was a first-time guy. Look what he's doing. Tomlin was a first-time guy. Look what he's doing. Like Sean McVay. Go through all. There's like a million names. There are first-time guys that are still in their job right now, dominant. And Nick Sirianni, first-time guy coming through, for Pete's sake. So everyone has been doing all this chit-chat, and you can either go positive or negative, but ultimately the proof will be in the pudding.
But but the other thing to this is you don't have to be positive or negative. You can let it play out.
Just neutral.
Like, seriously, in professional sports, people don't want to hear it because it doesn't bring in views. But we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. I mean, Paul, you may be completely wrong, and this thing goes over its head, and they go 4-13 next season. It could very well happen. We don't know. We have no idea. And to sit here and say it will or won't is ridiculous. You can think this will happen because of X, Y, and Z, but to sit here and say absolutes now on February 5th, I think is ridiculous.
Well, Nick, I'll just tell you this. You hit the nail on the head. My favorite show to watch is neutral shows. When I'm like, let me turn on the thing. Hey, how do you feel about this? I'm not so sure. So do you love it? Maybe. I'm not sure. Do you hate it? I'm not really sure. Yeah, that's what I love. Just neutral, right in the middle. Don't give me a take one way or the other. Just kind of ride the pine. And then whatever happens, we'll react to it when it happens. Those are my favorite shows, Nick.
And again, that's the modern sports talk thing. And I try to blend it as much as possible where I will give my opinion, but also try to just objectively tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
I just look at where the Jets are right now. 14 years of no playoffs, 8 years of below 500 seasons.
Sure.
What do you expect to happen on February 5th? What are you complaining about on February 5th?
Yeah.
Like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, I think Aaron Glenn, with how he acted and how he sounded, it sounds like they have a plan. It sounds like there's trust in the building for Woody Johnson. That can go away too.
Sure.
That can go away. So I look at things and I say February 5th is too early to talk about opinions on certain things. And if this team is going to go here, or if the organization is going to be in a worse situation now than they were before, we don't know. And,
so you're not willing
to recognize that.
So Nick, you're not willing to say right now that a year from now the Jets are going to be in the Super Bowl? You're not willing to say that?
I don't think they're going to be in the Super Bowl, but I think my prediction is that they make the playoffs.
Oh, hey, all right, sign me the hell up. I haven't seen that since I was in high school. So, that would it'd be terrific.
It's my prediction. I'm not going to sit here and say they are absolutely unequivocally making the playoffs because they're going to bring back Rodgers and do all these different things, and they'd be dumb not to bring them back. If they don't bring them back, there's a plan. If they do bring them back, there's a plan. We have to wait to see what they're going to try to do during the combine and during the free agency period and during the draft and all these different things.
Yeah, but by the way, my staff off camera, make sure you clip that exactly where Nick Fury has said they're absolutely unequivocal. Just cut right there and a little splice there, and perfect. Well, let us know when that's ready. We'll tweet that out. Beautiful. All right, let's head back to the phone lines. Got 800 people in the room. Like the video, hit subscribe. By the way, everybody, we're 145 subscribers away from giving away a free piece of autographed New York Jets memorabilia signed by 2 former New York Jets first-round picks. Again, joining our giveaway for the football and everything else, that giveaway cost you money. The subscriber giveaway is friggin' free. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel. So get your mama, your grandma, brother, sister, everybody subscribing to the channel. You have an opportunity. One lucky subscriber will get that autographed piece of New York Jets memorabilia, again signed by 2 former New York Jets first round picks. Again, only 145 subscribers away. Let's go back to the phone lines. Hep joins us here on the show. What's up, Hep? Good morning.
Hey, Nick. Hey, Paul. I keep hearing the name Quinn Ewers, possibly a pick in the second round. You hear anything about that? And is he any good, Nick?
I'll just say this. We saw it on Matt Miller's mock draft. That was the mock of Quinn Ewers to the Jets, the Texas quarterback. Go ahead, Nick.
I like Ewers as a prospect. I was impressed with how he looked at times during those seasons out in Texas. I think he gets kind of a bad rap with everything because people wanted to see Archie Manning instead of him.
Right.
I wouldn't take him in the first round. Not right now. Maybe he improves, but really there's only 2 quarterbacks that I feel are worthy of being first round picks right now, and that's Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. If you take a flyer on him in round 2, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you pair him with a strong offensive line. You want to make sure you've got a plethora of weapons for him. Make sure the defense is okay. So maybe they go edge rusher or defensive tackle, Mason Graham type. There's a lot of different ways they can go, but I think second round, if they're interested in finding the quarterback, I think Ewers certainly could be that kind of guy.
Yeah, here's the thing, Hep, real quick on Quinn Ewers. Okay, a lot of people thought that maybe he could make this seismic leap this past college football season that just ended. That he could like seize again. It's kind of the quarterback conversation of like, oh, Shadur Sanders, oh, okay, well, like Quinn Ewers could have grabbed everything by the haunches and went to town. Now Quinn Ewers, yeah, right, 100%, same sort of thing. Jaden Daniels going crazy. Quinn Ewers had 12 interceptions this year. That is the amount of interceptions he had combined over the previous 2 seasons. So he had a lot of turnovers. That's a little bit of a concern. Now he had more touchdowns, so there's, I guess, a little bit of give and take there. But also there was just a little bit of this. His completion percentage went down from last season. The interceptions doubled from the previous season. So some of those analytics, yards per attempt, went down. There was a couple of numbers. Again, they also got to the college football playoff. Of course, it was also expanded. So he's an interesting guy. But yeah, Matt Miller in his ESPN mock draft had him as a mock draft pick to the Jets at 42. And that's going to be a popular place for the quarterbacks that slip. Who is QB3? Does QB3 go in the first round? If they don't, is Jackson Dart there at 42? Is Quinn Ewers? Did the Jets go Kyle McCord? Is there some other quarterback name that rises throughout this process? NFL Combine. That'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I did hear that from Matt Miller there, Hep.
Yeah. One quick thing. I did hear a possible trade rumor with Myles Garrett, Will McDonald, and our number 1 pick.
Wait. So what's the package again? So 4 Myles Garrett we give up. What now?
McDonald and our number 1 pick.
He wants to go to a contender. He wants to go to
the Jets. Yeah. Okay. Perfect fit, Nick. I'm not understanding your question. Right. Yeah.
I think it's far more likely, and this is a doomsday scenario for the Jets, but I think it's far more likely a team like the Bills does everything in their power.
Oh God, disgusting.
And I will say,
what about your Eagles? Your Eagles need a pass rusher. You get Myles Garrett before the Buffalo Bills, for Pete's sake.
Well, I will sit here and say, if there's any GM to simply sit there and go, I want him just because I want him, it's Howie Roseman. This is a deal that Howie Roseman has made time and time again over the decades. Some of it's worked out, other times it hasn't, but this is a deal he absolutely can make. I look at Buffalo, though, as a legitimate team to try and get him. But I also look at the NFC East entirely. I look at Washington. I look at Dallas. I look at Philadelphia. Obviously, the Browns are going to want to send him if they were to trade him, because
NFC, right? Yeah.
But if they were to trade him, they would want to bring him to an NFC team so they don't have to deal with him as much. If Buffalo comes out and gives the farm, that changes the conversation. But I think with Garrett's declaration that he wants to be a part of a Super Bowl contender, Buffalo, Philly, Washington, Dallas,
Detroit,
those kind of teams are the ones that you can really take a look at. And if he ends up going to Buffalo, that is a doomsday scenario for Eric Glenn.
Yeah, that is. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the call, Hep. And here's the honest reality here. Is I don't even know if that gets it done, quite frankly. Hep, Will McDonald, who's coming off a double-digit sack season, very intriguing, young. That would be a lot of things I imagine if I'm Cleveland I would want. I'd want a young pass rusher. I'd want picks, not picks.
Yeah.
And even though 7th overall is very juicy, and that would be, I imagine, very intriguing. The Browns already have the 2nd overall pick. They've had years where they've had these multiple top picks at the top of the draft. That would be intriguing. But unfortunately, like I said, I think it would be more. Bill M says Miles to Houston. That would make a lot of sense for people who forget. He's an Aggie. Former Aggie there for Myles Garrett. So going back home, Dallas Cowboys seems like a sexy thing on the surface, but I don't know if that's something Jerry would do. Again, how often does a Myles Garrett become available? I mean, this is this is cool for the offseason. I love the NFL always dominates, so it'll be something to watch for sure. I just pray to all hell that he does not go to the Buffalo Bills, because that would scare the flying bejesus out of me. Myles Garrett is a freak. He's a former defensive player of the year. He could be the defensive player of the year like every year. and he is an absolute game wrecker that can just destroy the universe. So, yeah, I'm hoping his ass gets a nice shipping label on the left ass cheek to the NFC somewhere. Eagles, Lions, Cowboys. Yeah, there you go.
We'll take them.
See, I'm playing Will Smith and Hitch. I'm just making deals happen. So terrific. As long as it's not the Bills, that's a beautiful play. So Myles Garrett would be fun. Let me throw that one out there too. Do you have any said Cooper Kupp? It sounds like he's going to be moved. So Myles Garrett, we don't know, right? The Browns, we don't want to trade him. Myles like, I want out of here. We'll see what happens here. I think ultimately he gets traded, but that one's interesting. Rams, we are trading him. That sounds like it's totally happening. Where could you see Cooper Kupp landing?
Similar spots. I look at Washington. They desperately need a second receiver.
That'd be nice.
I think that's a clear cut. I think an underrated team is probably like New England. New England needs quality receivers around Drake May. I think they're going to go and spend as much money as they possibly can on T. Higgins. I think they're going to give him like
so too.
$5 million. And I think it's going to be an absurd contract. And Higgins is good, but I still think the Patriots are going to be like, we need to pay him this money. If he's going to want to leave Cincinnati, we got to make sure he's heavily compensated. So I think New England certainly could be an option as well. Detroit may be an underdog there because of his relationship with Jared Goff.
That's a good one.
I mean, the Cowboys don't really have a fit there because of CeeDee Lamb. He's more from the slot. Maybe they try to use him with Brian Schottenheimer, try to use that dual slot role. Carolina is another team that will need a receiver. Trying to think what else. I mean, they could be doing right by him by trading him to a contender, and if they do that, all the power to them. But I think of the wide receiver needy teams around the league, you look at Washington, New England. Trying to think what else. Maybe Pittsburgh. They're gonna need
they need somebody for God's sakes.
Yeah, they're going to need people. So there's a lot of different teams that could be available, but it's all about the right asking price. And he carries a massive cap. He's going to have to restructure that contract as well as part of it, which will only murky the waters a little bit in terms of where's he going to go, because he may not want to negotiate with the Patriots or with the Panthers, but he may be willing to negotiate with Washington or with Pittsburgh, those kind of things.
I think if we were to make a free agency bold take on February 5th, again, we don't know all these things. I think it's what you just said about T. Higgins. I think the Patriots are going to give a blank check because they swung and missed on Calvin Ridley. It's like, Patriots, you suck. And then Brandon Ayuk's like, blow me. I'm not getting traded there. I'm not signing that contract. And they offered him everything. And I imagine that was very humble pie, which thank God the New England Patriots got. They need as much humble pie. I hope they rot in hell for 1,000 years, quite frankly. But with all that humble, I think they're going to now say, okay, enough's enough. Here's some crazy ass. Is it Justin Jefferson money? Do they go $35 million or something crazy? I could totally see New England biting off way more over the top. It's free agency, and they're like, F it, we want weapons for Drake May. Let's go, and let's pay the golden price, whatever that costs. I could totally see that.
It's like Andre Rison back in the 90s when he was paid like the 5th highest contracted in receiver history to be in Atlanta, and he lasted all of a year because he was a number 2, and he was always a number 2. Now, I think T. Higgins can be a number 1 because he's shown the ability to do so.
Yeah.
But I think the Patriots are going to go up to him and be like, $36 million. We'll look bad, but we got our number 1 receiver. 100%. And I think there's other teams that'll be interested. The Chargers being one of them. They'll be a lot of money. But I think the Patriots have like $150 million in cap.
They got money to burn.
Well, we'll have fully guaranteed $36 million. Pay it right now. Let's do it. I think that could absolutely. It's crazy to think about, but if New England's going to get a top receiver, that's the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think so, in a very desperate way. Nick Faria, as always, thank you for joining us every Wednesday, giving us all the latest in Jets land and good conversations. And you might be hosting some shindig this weekend. Good luck on whatever that looks like with whatever's going on. I'm very much looking forward to next week. Boy, will that be a hell of a show. Either way, so.
I'm either going to be the most depressed person on the planet or so overjoyed that I'm agreeing with everybody. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Either way, it should be mildly entertaining. That's for sure. Nick, thanks, brother.
See you, buddy.
All right, there he is. Nick Faria, Jets reporter for Athlon Sports. Make sure you follow him. Nick Faria on social media. Baby, I want to thank the 800 people that are in the room. Thank you so much. Again, if you have more questions about the Darren Mougey firing, it's all in the YouTube description down below in our article. I am the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy on Sports. So, guys, make sure you guys check it out. Again, we have 2 giveaways going on right now. Here, I'll give you the free one first. That all you have to do is subscribe. You will get a chance and an autographed piece of New York Jets memorabilia autographed by 2 former New York Jets first-round picks. All you have to do is subscribe. When we get to 7,500 subscribers at the place of business, let me do the refresh button to see if that number has changed at all. Okay, yeah, we're still at 145 subscribers away. So as soon as we get to 7,500, I'm giving that away. So folks, help us get to 7,500 as soon as possible. Share out the YouTube link to your Jets fans, friends, and family, and tell them to subscribe to the channel. Help spread the gospel of all things Boy Green Daily. Again, as soon as we get to 7,500, we're giving away that piece of autographed New York Jets memorabilia. For the people that want to pay the premium price for an even bigger prize pack, just gift Boy Green Coffee Club memberships. Send in your super chats, super stickers, all that jazz. We're keeping track of all of it on our Excel sheets, baby. So purchase Boy Green Coffee Club membership for yourself, purchase them for your neighbor, and let's friggin' go. And we are giving away, again, let me throw that prize pack up one more friggin' time, baby, here on the channel. That is a autographed New York Jets football, Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall, Olu Fasto, you name it, a limited edition collectible. And plus, also in this prize pack is a New York Jets Nike Salute to Service long sleeve brand spanking new, a custom laser engraving Jets Boy Green gift package. All 3 of these items will be gifted on March 1st to one lucky person that purchased a raffle ticket or raffle tickets. You always have a chance if you have at least one raffle ticket. So I highly recommend everyone who watches the show hop on over to YouTube. It's in the YouTube description of every video. You can click it. Join the Boy Green Coffee Club here. It's $2.99. You click that, you buy a ticket, you have a chance at winning that prize pack at the end of the month. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you tomorrow morning for Boy Green Daily. Take care, everybody. We'll see you.